Hey, welcome to week 4. We are getting started this week with just a quick talk to update us on the course where we're at, and to talk about a couple of issues that I'm seeing, some couple things to think about with your writing. Uh, this week we are talking about audience and craft, and that is in particular to think about who are we writing for, why are we writing for those people, and what are we trying to accomplish, but then also how writing becomes a craft, especially once you know who your audience is. Just think about the complexity of audience for just a second. So, generally, when we think about writing for audiences, we're thinking about who we want to persuade, who we want to impress, who we want to entertain. Sometimes we think very commercially about our audiences. I want to write a bestseller, or I want to write something that makes people cry. Sometimes we think very personally. I want to write something that makes people look at me and say I'm wonderful or I'm amazing, or I want to write something and persuade somebody to love me. We think multiple ways and multiple purposes, but usually writing itself, we may have one singular audience we're trying to write for, but there are multiple audiences even within that one piece. Let's take, for instance, the example of writing a letter to your, uh, uh, let's say, your credit card company because you feel like you paid a bill and now you're getting double charged. Now, when you write that letter, you're writing directly for that audience, the credit card company, to try to persuade them to drop the charges that they have on you. But you're also, at the same time, ideally thinking about the future judge who may try to put a decision down to garnish your wages. Maybe you're thinking about writing it for your lawyer to help explain what happened and to document. Maybe you're writing it for your spouse to show them that you care enough about your finances that you're writing a letter. There are multiple purposes in writing a letter. Let's go back. Let's think about your personal diary. You keep a diary every night. You write all your thoughts and all your dreams, and maybe your audience there is just this blank piece of paper, dear diary. But you're also writing it with what would you have said to Becky if you could have said it to Becky, or maybe you're writing it for your somebody in your household that you think is reading your diary, but really, you're also writing it for future you, the you don't know yet. And you're writing your thoughts and your dreams and your words to try to remember what that feeling was at this moment so that your future you will be able to read it. And frankly, whether you know it or not, you're also writing it for whoever finds your body when you're gone and they find your diaries and they read it and they say, "Oh, I remember when Aunt Jessica did this." Our writing has multiple audiences and multiple purposes, and we move from that idea to this idea of multiple audiences and really getting to know who your audience is, to thinking about the issue of craft. Because when you have a specific audience in mind, that changes the way that you go about writing. It changes what you're trying to accomplish with your writing, and it changes the amount of work you put into your writing, because for a letter to the credit card company, you want to be very specific, very direct, and have your evidence in line. A entry to your dear diary, you're more emotional, you can talk in shorthand, you can refer to things that only you would know. If you're writing a poem, you have to think about who your audience is and what you want to accomplish with them. But then thinking about that audience affects the way you work on that poem, what kind of language you use, what kind of line length you use, and so forth. I'm going to come back to this notion here in just a couple minutes. But before I do that, I want to give you some updates on the course. First, great job on workshop. We had 3 great participants last week, and I really appreciated the people that jumped on and put their work up there for us to see. You'll notice that I added last week some stuff about genre writing, because our 3 examples last week were really great examples of genre writing, and so I wanted you to think a little bit more about that. So I posted some information about that a little bit later in the week. Um, Thanks for all the great comments that you put on each other's writing. I think the workshop was doing a really great work. There was both praise and support, but there was also some critical comments, not mean critical, but uh, analytical comments on the writing that I think should be helpful to those writers as they think about revision. I would like to see some more timely responses. So jump on a little bit more quickly and make sure that you're engaged and thoughtful. The idea of workshop is not just to comment on somebody's writing and make them feel good. The idea is to engage in a discussion about that writing so that they can see their readers in discussion so that they can make better decisions with their craft once they better understand their audience. So make sure there's a discussion happening there. Uh, Workshop, second workshop is up. Remember, you've got to post twice in workshop before the end of the semester. This is week 4. We have week 5, 6, and 7. So you have 4 weeks left to try to get two posts, 2 different weeks. 3 of you already have one. So we need to jump on. You need to make sure you're involved. If you don't get it posted this week, you'll only have 3 weeks after that. So try to go ahead and jump on if you can. Your posts need to be up by Thursday at 11:39. That's May 30th at 11:59. Make sure you get those posts up so that people can start to comment on your work. No, you can't get it up late. Nobody's going to be required to comment on your work then, and it won't count towards the workshop if you get it up late. I do want to mention a little bit on a down note, that there are some people who are not participating very much at all, either on discussion boards or on workshop or submitting their journals. You need to be aware of that if you're one of those people. If you are one of those people, you're probably not watching this lecture anyway, but I do want to make sure I say it. June 5th is the last day to withdraw from the class. So if you're somebody who's just not doing any of the work, or you can't figure out the technology, or it's just been overwhelming and you haven't been able to get anything up, you're probably getting to the point where you want to think about withdrawing. June 5th is the last day to do the withdrawal. I want to say one other thing, or one other down note, and then I want to talk about poetry for just a second. I have noticed on a couple people's discussion boards, a couple people's journals, that there may be some AI writing happening here. If you are using AI for this course, knock it off. I'm going to catch you, and I will fail you for the course. And for me, I teach philosophy and I teach composition, college writing, and I teach creative writing. For me, there is no worse place to use AI than creative writing class, because this is supposed to be you. I mean, the other ones are too, and I get offended there too. But in creative writing, it's particularly heartbreaking to see somebody use AI or plagiarize in this course, because why are you even here if that's what you're going to do? So if you are using AI, um, I'm going to notice it and I will give you a warning, but I need you need to just stop right now and just do your own work. I want to mention something about poetry. I've been looking at some of the poems that you've been posting in our discussion boards and in your journals, and you're going to be getting another batch of journals back either this week or next. There will be I'm going to respond to one of them, but I want to say something about poetry, and that is a lot of the poems that I'm seeing are this iambic pentameter rhyme scheme, where you rhyme the last word of each line, or sometimes it's iambic pentameter where you've got like 10 beats on a line, and then the last word is rhymed with the next line or the line after that. I want to say a couple things about that, especially since we're talking about craft. One, there is a whole long tradition of rhyming and line beats and the ways that rhymes are formed in a poem. So, for instance, a sonnet, a Shakespearean sonnet, has 14 lines, and that rhyme scheme usually goes A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Now, that may not mean anything to you, but what that means is that the last line, the last word of the first line is rhymed with the last word of the third line. The last word of the second line is rhymed with the last word of the fourth line, and so on. And what I mean by this, the reason why I'm telling you this is that rhyming in poetry has logic often and math, and it's done in a very standard way to develop that rhyme scheme. If not, if it's not done in that standard way, why do it? If you're not trying to write a traditional kind of poem within a specific kind of poetic form, why rhyme? Why not just let it go? And what that means when you let it go is that you are participating in a kind of poetry that is far more modern, far more accessible, and frankly, I believe, far more interesting because rhyming at the end of a line kind of messes with your meaning because you're so busy trying to get to that rhyme. Rhymes don't often do much for poetry. I want to share with you one poem. So this is a 1920s poem by William Carlos Williams. William Carlos Williams an important American poet. Um, and just want to show you the simplicity of this poem, but I want to do it so that we can talk about lines and what he's doing with lines. The red wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Now, some people have laughed at this poem over the years. Some people have said, why is that a poem? Or what's going on there? Or that doesn't talk about love or loss or anything. We can make different critiques of this poem, but Williams was trying to do something specific in this poem, and that is to express a way of writing that we don't generally think of. Rather than thinking of a Shakespearean sonnet, A, B, A, B, D, C, D, C, D, and so on, with iambic pentameter lines that does this magic in a poem that is very formal and standardized. Williams was trying to show how each poem kind of discovers its own line length, how each poem kind of does its own work. So let's look at this poem again. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Notice that there are three very solid sensual images here. Red wheelbarrow, rain glazed with rain water, white chickens. So those three images, there's two color images. There's this feeling of rain image. Um, he's using these three images to build this scene in our brain. And he does it with a very sparse, very simple language, with very unemotional language. He's not giving us a way to think about this other than whatever connections we might have to a barnyard out in the country. Notice, go back to the first line. So much depends. Well, what depends? What is it that depends on a red wheelbarrow? That's where the meaning part of this poem gets playful, and it gets us to think about what is it actually that depends on a red wheelbarrow. All of that is just the basic meaning of the poem, but I want you to look at the line length. There are 22 syllables in this poem. 22. That's it. And in 22 poems, Williams builds this image that sits in our brain. Also notice how crafty this is. So much depends, 4 syllables, upon 2 syllables. The next stanza, a red wheel, 3 syllables, barrow, 2 syllables, glazed with rain, 3 syllables, water, 2 syllables, beside the white, 4 syllables, chickens, 2 syllables. So it goes 4 syllables, 2 syllables in the first stanza, 3 syllables, 2 syllables in the next two stanzas, and then 4 syllables, 2 syllables in the fourth stanza. Now, this may not mean much to you. Maybe this doesn't impress you at all. But for me, the craftiness of this poem shows a poet who is really thinking about lines, really thinking about what he's trying to accomplish, really trying to build this solid image in our brain with a very sparse sense of language. So a couple things on craft and poetry, something to think about as you're working this week. Um, rhyming isn't necessary. You're trying to capture an image, a feeling with not full sentences, but with language and lines. Poetry is made of lines. So when you're thinking about your lines, you got to think about why you're creating this line. What is it trying to accomplish? Why are you breaking it where you're breaking it? This is craft. This is what writing does. I want to now mention to you the a little bit about the form of the class, and you should be getting a sense of what's going on with it. Um, we are doing exercises in our lectures and in our discussion boards. You're bringing those exercises that you're doing and you're putting them into your journal. You're making a choice over the writing that you're doing to put into your journal. You're then going to be taking one or two of those exercises ideally and transforming it, working on it a little bit more and putting it into the workshop where other people comment on it. You'll then take the comments that people are putting on those pieces and revise your piece and develop it further, hopefully. And then finally, at the end of the semester, remember that we are building towards a portfolio where you will take your writing from the discussion boards, from exercises, from your journal, from workshops. You'll take your writing and you will present it as a representation of your writing for this class. Now, you may move from that actually and do another step where you work on your piece and you revise it and you actually submit it to be published by a poetry journal, by a dramatic journal, as a short story. Writing has multiple levels of engagement and process, multiple levels of craft. The exercises are are a starting point. Getting it published by a national journal is a finishing point, although people still revise after that. Keep working, keep revising, keep thinking about your craft, and also think about who you're crafting for. Who is that audience? I'll see you on your discussion boards. I'll see you in the workshop. Do a great job this week, and we'll talk to you. You've got one more lecture coming this week on revision. We'll see you then.